and it's also tough because it's like feels like when I talked to him yesterday. He was like completely fine. We were like talking about like because he lived here when he was in the army, or he was
In
stationed here.
Germany?
Yeah,
Oh,
and
in Berlin or some other like station in?
another station, like I guess somewhere outside of Frankfurt. Like they were
Okay, right.
stationed there to keep the Russians from coming over the wall. I think is what he was saying. But like, was there a wall anywhere other outside of Berlin?
I don't
I gotta
know.
ask him again now. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah. So he
There was a
was.
very strange power sharing thing between the Russians and the former allies in whatever bifurcated Germany at the time, right? Right, like Frankfurt's like this gleaming thing, and
Yeah,
Dresden is like a straight out of 19 whatever 30
yeah,
something.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting country, and and I'm sure it was like even more interesting at this time and when he was there. Yeah, he was telling me about how because this was like right before I guess the he was just coming out as the Vietnam War was starting,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and they were trying to get him to go to Vietnam, and he was like, "No, I did my time," like.
yeah,
And he was like, I stayed over here for 2 years so that when I'm done, And
yeah,
but he was like talking about like how you know him getting into like lots of fights and stuff with the the other people in the army, on some racial shit, and and then just being over here and like being hit on by the women and stuff like this, and but after having grown up in the South, he was always thinking like, oh, it's some sort of setup and like, you know what I
right.
mean? Like you know what I mean? So it's
He
just,
was on his guard.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was really interesting, and so I always periodically ask him if he has any other children that just in case the answer might change at some point, but like, you know,
He's a he's in he is denied so far.
so far he's denied. No other children in Philadelphia and no other children here. So
Yeah,
yeah, so
it's interesting. I mean, that generation that lived all over the place. You know, life has its ways, right?
yeah, yeah. Well,
So,
the other thing was I was talking when I had like a few people in my family die at the same time. I mean, not at the same time, but died and ended up being handled by the same funeral parlor. And
yeah.
she was over the course of like three funerals and having these conversations with her, or like I'm not having a conversation. I'm usually just in the room when conversations are taking place. But she was talking about how in South Philly, there are so many people that are related without knowing it.
No.
Yeah, because
Wow.
and this is, you know, there's so much like when you we have this view of the way things used to be,
Mm.
and then there was just like so much unspoken stuff happening, like
Yeah.
like if a girl got pregnant, they send her down south, and then when she came back, she had a sister or a brother, but it was really
Hmm.
like her kid. You know what I mean?
It. Yeah.
And like people having whole separate families that the other ones either knew about or didn't know about, or you know what I mean. So
Hmm.
it's really like it's really interesting. And so this is what the funeral director was talking about. So it's and I don't know, like it makes me like I don't know how you feel about this as a married person or whatever, but I've come to the conclusion just marriage is like it's wishful thinking on a certain level for a lot of people.
Mm.
Um, because I just don't know of many people who have these super strong like well you never know what goes on in anyone's even though people seem like they have these super strong marriages and blah blah blah. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Like I kind of feel like from what I can see, it's always a little something that has happened or like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So, but that's
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I think I don't definitely don't think it's for everybody,
yeah.
and I think for myself, it's more like I don't know. I For myself, I guess it's not something that I ever felt I would do.
Mm-hmm.
Probably to the alarm of my own father.
Mm-hmm.
um, but it's also not something that once things started lining up, that I felt like you can't really force it. Kind
Yeah.
of, at least for me, like it wasn't something that could be forced or faked or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but regarding like everybody being interrelated, one thing that one thing that I've that's been quite interesting is I joined 23andMe a few years ago,
I
and
don't know what
so
that is.
23andMe, sorry, 23andMe is you spit into a vial like this big, like 5 healthy regurgitations, and you send it in, and they will basically sequence your genome and send you all of your biostats, like all
Okay.
of your, all of your heritage stuff and all of the, every single chromosome, and they'll give you the raw data. So
Okay.
that way, it's like I think it was like $100 for to do this, and so um, what was interesting is that what came out of that, right? Like we talked about being related to everybody.
Mm.
There's a lot of people that are in my third and fourth cousin. So basically, what I did was I submitted this. Um, I got back my raw data, and I on the 23andMe website I said, hey, let me be found by like DNA relatives, right?
Mm.
And what happened was I got an email from an English granny
Mm.
who was so I'm like me, like imagine me like this with my yearling daughter on my shoulders, and she's pulling at my fro.
Mm-hmm.
That's my profile picture on 23andMe.
Mm.
And so like shortly after I joined, I get an email from a English granny who is like, we're related.
Well.
What is happening?
Mm.
And we like shared like something like like 12%, 8 or 12% DNA.
Wow.
And she turned out back to so hey, I'm bringing it home with this war talk
Mm.
or war discussion. So turns out that my grandmother's older brother
Mm-hmm.
had fought in World War II,
Mm-hmm.
and he was stationed in southern England, and he was like a ambulance driver.
Mm-hmm.
He had had an affair or relationship with one of the young women there, and then when the war was over, he went back to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And then he never talked about his relationship there, and now he's been long past.
Mm-hmm.
And so this woman was from that relationship, the child of that relationship, and she had been trying for a long time. She's in her 70s now,
Yeah.
trying for a long time to locate her father,
Uh-oh.
and she had hired private investigators. She had joined like all of the websites, and just on a whim, because it was in the news, and the founders was like, or are from I think the wife of one of the Google founders.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of these hot young startups,
Mm-hmm.
and so she just joined,
Mm-hmm.
and bam, she finds this half Nigerian guy
Mm-hmm.
on the thing, and like wondering what is going on.
Wow.
So my American grandmother's older brother, this is his child,
Mm.
and so she and my mother and this woman are first cousins, and so we're
Okay.
second cousins. And so after we talked and exchanged data and stuff like that, or when I say data, I mean like exchange information on family. I took a picture of my grandmother and all of her siblings,
Mm-hmm.
so like 6 of them or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent this picture to her, and basically that was the first picture she'd had of her father.
Wow.
So she was, she was in tears. And actually, we Skyped later for like an hour, and she was just like, "Oh my goodness,
Mm-hmm.
can't believe that I have a picture of my father." And
Mm-hmm.
anyway, apparently, she and her husband are both people whose parents fought in whose fathers fought in World War II,
Mm-hmm.
and who didn't know their father. Like their
Mm-hmm.
mother was pregnant, and then they didn't come back from like a bomb raid, a deployment or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, apparently, there's like thousands of these people.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, many people were killed in World War II, and so it was interesting for me to do this to sort of understand a little bit more about my varied background.
Mm-hmm.
Which on my Nigerian side is very crisp and clear, but on my American side is a little bit more ambiguous. And so here you go. So yeah, so that was kind of an unexpected outcome from just spitting into a vial.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, I don't know. I think I might want to do this at some point in time and see. Yeah, and see what can be found out. Because I mean, my family tree has been researched through like paper records, but not
Yeah.
through not through DNA or anything like that. Like, and it'd be interesting to find out who
So when you say paper records, do you mean like you have like registries of marriage, registries of birth, and you have all of that like dating back generations and stuff?
Yeah, like
That's
uh
good.
back to on my father's side, back to a freed slave.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of his name right now. Actually, oh, I left it. That's back in Montreal, actually. But yeah, like back to a freed slave. Um, but with these kinds of things, when people are married, then this is what the family says. This is who has been designated as the father of this child or
Right.
the mother of this child. And then there's what actually happened, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so it would be interesting to find out,
Mm-hmm.
So, because I mean, I know there are some things in my family that like aren't necessarily public information, like, or maybe even information that all members of the family know, you know what I mean? And so
Right.
that kind of stuff. So, um,
Yeah,
yeah,
real life is a lot more messy than the whatever's committed to paper for
yes,
posterity.
yes. And this is what I mean overall about like all of these things. It's like I think on a level, like people do the best that they can and do what they think is the right thing at the time, and and or what was right by tradition or right by for appearances and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
but you never know the whole story. Maybe it's better that way. Maybe it's not better that way. But like,
Yeah.
yeah.